You are born a princess, heir to the most powerful throne in Europe. You have everything, except for one thing, your father's approval. Because for the Tudor daughters, their greatest threat was not an invading army, it was their own father, the king. This is their tragic, true story. To understand the tragedy of his daughters, we must first understand the man, the monarch, King Henry VIII. His reign began with promise, a Renaissance prince, handsome, athletic, and scholarly. But beneath this charismatic surface festered a deep, gnawing insecurity. His father, Henry VII, had won the crown on the battlefield, ending the decades-long civil war known as the Wars of the Roses. The Tudor claim to the throne was new, and in Henry's mind, fragile. He was consumed by a desperate, almost paranoid obsession with securing the dynasty. And for him, security had a name, a son, a male heir. In the brutal politics of the 16th century, he believed a female ruler was an invitation for chaos, a sign of weakness that would plunge England back into bloody civil war. This fear would become the crucible in which his daughters' lives were forged. His first child, Mary, born in 1516 to his Spanish queen, Catherine of Aragon, was initially the apple of his eye. She was the pearl of the realm. Henry doted on her, parading her before foreign ambassadors. She was brilliant, receiving a world-class education that rivaled any prince's in Europe, fluent in multiple languages, and a gifted musician. She was betrothed to the most powerful ruler in Christendom, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. She was everything a king could want in an heir, except a boy. As years passed and Queen Catherine failed to produce a son, Henry's affection for Mary began to curdle, replaced by a frantic obsession. That obsession had a new name, Anne Boleyn, a captivating lady-in-waiting with intelligent, dark eyes. Anne refused to be the king's mistress. She wanted to be queen, and she promised Henry what Catherine could not, a son. What followed was a cataclysm that would tear England apart. To marry Anne, Henry needed to annul his marriage to Catherine, an act the Pope in Rome refused to grant. In his relentless pursuit, Henry VIII broke with the Catholic Church, declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England, and nullified his own 24-year marriage. And with that single act, his daughter Mary's world shattered. Her glorious childhood vanished overnight. The king, her own father, declared her illegitimate. She was stripped of her title, no longer Princess Mary, but demoted to the Lady Mary. The psychological trauma was immense. She was forcibly separated from her beloved mother, Catherine, whom she would never see again. In a final sadistic twist of cruelty, she was sent to serve as a lady-in-waiting to her own infant half-sister, the new heir, Princess Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn's daughter. Mary, once the jewel of England, was now a servant in her own home, a living symbol of her father's discarded past, under constant pressure to renounce her mother and her faith. Her refusal to do so put her life in constant peril. She lived in fear, her health suffered, and she was isolated from all who had once loved and supported her. Her father, the man who had once called her his pearl, was now her tormentor. The new hope of the dynasty, Elizabeth, was born in 1533. For a brief moment, she was everything, celebrated, pampered, the future of Tudor England. But her fate was tied to her mother, Anne Boleyn. And when Anne also failed to deliver a son, producing only Elizabeth, the king's infatuation soured into suspicion and rage. The vivacious queen who had enchanted a king now found herself trapped in 1536 in one of the most shocking events in English history. Queen Anne Boleyn was arrested on trumped-up charges of treason, incest, and adultery. She was tried, found guilty, and beheaded on the Tower Green. Her crime was not treason. It was her failure to produce a male heir. And with her mother's death, the 2-year-old Elizabeth's life was also destroyed. Like her half-sister Mary before her, she was declared illegitimate, a bastard. She lost her title, her status, and her mother, all in one horrific blow. From that moment on, Elizabeth learned to survive. She grew up in a world of shifting allegiances and constant danger. She never knew if she, too, could face her mother's fate at the whim of her unpredictable, tyrannical father. She learned to be silent, to be observant, to be cunning. She learned to hide her sharp intellect and her true feelings behind a mask of obedience. This terrifying childhood taught her the political mastery that would one day define her reign. The great, cruel irony of Henry's life is what historians call his great matter. He had defied the Pope, transformed England's religion, and executed countless friends, advisors, and 2 of his own wives, all for a son, and in 1537 he finally got one. His 3rd wife, Jane Seymour, gave birth to Prince Edward. Henry was ecstatic. The Tudor dynasty was secure. But his triumph was short-lived. Queen Jane died from complications of childbirth just days later, and his precious heir, Edward, was a frail and sickly child from the very beginning. The court of the late King Henry was a tangled web of rivalry, especially between his 3 children. Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward were often pitted against each other. Their places in the line of succession constantly debated and reshuffled according to the king's latest whim or marriage. Mary, the devout Catholic, was at odds with the Protestant-crazed Edward and Elizabeth. Elizabeth, the clever survivor, had to carefully navigate her relationships with both her older sister, who saw her as the symbol of her mother's ruin, and her younger brother, the king-in-waiting. They were siblings bound by blood, but divided by faith, ambition, and the deep emotional scars inflicted by their shared father. And now, for the ultimate historical irony. After a lifetime of obsession, after unleashing chaos upon his kingdom for a son, Henry VIII's male heir died. King Edward VI succumbed to illness at the age of just 15. All of Henry's scheming, all the blood and betrayal, had come to nothing. His dynasty, he would have thought, was over. But it wasn't, because the powerful rulers he had feared, the ones he believed would bring civil war, were his own daughters. First, his rejected daughter, Mary, took the throne. As Queen Mary I, she fought ferociously to reverse her father's religious reforms and restore Catholicism to England, a legacy that earned her the grim moniker Bloody Mary. After her death, the throne passed to the other forgotten daughter, the bastard child of an executed queen, Queen Elizabeth I. She would go on to rule for over 44 years, a period so magnificent it would be known as England's Golden Age. She defeated the Spanish Armada, fostered an explosion of culture, and became one of the most brilliant, beloved, and successful monarchs in history. The very female rulers Henry VIII had cast aside and traumatized became his greatest, most enduring legacy. We put immense passion and research into bringing these forgotten stories to light. Your support is our greatest strength, and it truly inspires us to create more. If this investigation into the unknown has captivated you, please hit the like button and become a founding member of our community by subscribing to Whispering Tomes. Thank you for being here.